people board out their horses, and they have someone else muck the stalls, feed, turn them out to the field or paddock, and generally oversee the well-being. They are responsible for maintaining the facility, the barn, the fences, plumbing, electricity, and the general horse health. Now, depending on the facility and the services involved, determines how much you pay each month. We'll get into that a little later. Right now, we want to talk about having your own facility and what it takes to have it operational, maintained, and safe for you and your horse. There are big farms and little farms and backyard farms, but they all have one thing in common: the welfare of the horse. The main ingredients that go into this altered state of being include the land or pasture, a barn, a shed, some type of cover, fencing, water, tools, and maintenance. Now, this lifestyle is not for the faint of heart or for the novice. What can go wrong usually does, and not in a little way. Broken pipes, down fencing, loose horses, vet bills caused by loose horses or shoddy maintenance, and the never-ending work are just some of the issues. So why do so many of us choose to own our own farm? Because after the last horse is fed and the barn is secure, and you get a chance to sit down and look around, there's really nothing like it. Now, after boarding my horse for about a year, I'd had enough, and we'll go into boarding later. And I bought my own farm. Now, this was not my first farm, and I know all too well the pros and cons. And this farm wasn't perfect yet, but it had what I needed to begin. I invited our dressage expert, Bill Woods, to come and inspect and give me his take on what should be done and why to make this a farm perfect, within reason.
It's a lovely barn. I really like it. Again, when it comes to choosing things, to me, it's always a cost-benefit analysis. And safety is paramount, comfort for the horses, probably third in line, convenience for you, because you can put up with things if you know there's a greater good. Huge stalls are nice. If they were 12 by 12, they'd still work. If they were 12 by 10, they'd probably work. If they're little crummy, tight stalls, not so good. Having a good base that's nice and flat, that the horse isn't standing with one end of them up in the air and one end down, that matters a whole lot. Being sure that the floors will drain properly, and if you have a horse that paws, all right, rubber mats, or some people even still use wood. But the point is to do what serves your purpose and what's functional and what you can afford all the time.
We have 40 acres at Crown Point. We use the front 12. I'm in the big belief that you use what you can maintain. It was raw pasture land with some trees. We cleared it all and we laid it out to be a show facility. The biggest thing that I had to make sure of when I built the facility is that the layout was conducive to getting the horses in and out of the facility, in and out of the barn, and to and from the ring, even in the coldest days or the hottest days, or in an emergency, you were never too far away from the furthest pasture. Especially if a bad storm rolls up, you needed to make sure everything was very accessible. In doing the layout, I also was very careful with the wind and the sun selection. You always wanted to make sure that the wind passes through your barn in Florida, and in Florida ventilation is very important. So I built the barn so it had a very nice aisle breeze. I also built the barn so that it was slightly tilted away from the direct east-west sun, so that the barn didn't get direct sun all day long on one side of the barn or the other, which is very important.
Horses being quite destructive. Also, when you're building a barn, think about the wood situation. Some of them are great and don't do any kind of damage, and others tend to do the wood chewing and rubbing and that kind of thing. So if you do wood, you can also buy these caps that go over the top that just sort of, you tack them in. I think they do it with staples. It's just like a metal bracket, and that helps a lot. So that's something else that, at least on your top rails and maybe on your door tops, is a good thing to do.
This is a grand tour of our facility here. The barn itself is made of metal, and on the inside, it's metal laminated over wood. There's wood in the middle of it. But because of the metal on the outside and metal on both sides of this, it's very, very strong walls. And this is our tack room. Also, as you see here, Lazy Susan walls. These walls will spin around so you can saddle and put the saddles inside here and lock them up at night. Or lock them up if you go out of town.
They spin around to the other side?
Yes. And over here we have our wash racks. We have 4 indoor wash racks, complete with hot water. You use cement because if we were to put in asphalt when our horses all wear shoes and the sliding plates, and the asphalt itself, the horse's shoe would get down stuck in the asphalt and you're more prone to pull a shoe. On the concrete floors, the shoe's just going to slide around a little bit, and we don't lose shoes as often. Our horses they're under lights. The lights come on at 6 o'clock in the morning, they go off at 10 o'clock at night. They're going to have timers that turn them on, turn them off. Our horses all wear sheets. If anytime it's under 70 degrees, we put sheets on the horses. Anytime it's under 50, we put blankets on the horses. The bedding in all of our stalls is shavings. We like shavings better than straw for what we do. Horses seem to enjoy that when they're bedded up. They enjoy laying down, relaxing, taking things easy. If you come through a barn late at night, which I always have a walkthrough at my barn before we go to bed at night, just to check on the horses. And it's amazing how many horses lay down and relax and just kind of really stretch out and catch some Z's. Well, we have 22 stalls, but normally we keep around 25. We have some of the young horses that are outside. They'll live in one of the paddocks or one of the pastures. I'm a big believer in not storing hay inside of our barn. We keep a hay supplied just for the day's use. Our hay is stored out in a container, and that way, if anything was to happen to the hay in case of fire, it's a separate container.
I think it all comes down to what you can afford, quite honestly. But, you know, for ourselves, we needed obviously a barn that sort of could sort of stable probably approximately around 20 horses. We needed obviously you need enough land to be able to turn the horses out so they get some out time in the paddocks. And then obviously a big enough area and a big enough facilities to where you can train as very much sort of train for the dressage and train for the show jumping. The cross country, really we are able, you know, you're able to go off site and practice cross country a little bit at schooling places. So that, you know, I mean, if you can afford to have a bigger place and have the land and have cross country on your facility, that's great. But it's not the most vital thing really. It's being able to do the dressage and the show jumping, and then you can go off site and practice cross country.
Leslie wanted more land, and of course I would have loved to have more land as well, but obviously our budget was such that we had 2 choices. We could either have a lot more land and be further away from town, or we could have 11 acres and have this perfect setting, you know, where we're completely remote and on a tiny street. But I'm actually 5 minutes from a huge grocery store and 10 minutes from town, and I like that for myself. I didn't want to be stuck out in the middle of nowhere personally.
It's very important to me, first of all, not to use wire fencing. Wire fencing is prohibited in my book only because I don't trust wire, that if a horse runs into wire, it's too easy for them to separate the wire and get their foot caught through it. In fact, I've gotten some young stock in, and you can tell when they've all gotten caught up in some kind of wire. Naturally, no barbed wire is ever allowed in a facility like this. We use pressure treated 1x6x16 boards. The length of the board is very important because we space our fence sections 8 feet apart, and our fencing is spaced such that the 16-foot board absorbs an impact. So should a horse run into it, if it was only an 8-foot board, which was just wide enough to cover the section, it's too easy for the horse to just pop the board out. So we stagger our boards so that the 16 feet boards don't always end on the same post. And we make sure that we at least have 3 board fencing. 2 board fencing encourages the horses to reach under the boards too much. 4 boards great, but it's very expensive given that each board runs anywhere from $7.90 up to $9 a board. So when a horse breaks a board or eats through a board, it kind of gets expensive. So 4 boards ideal, but it's very expensive. As far as the posts go, it's very, very important to select a 4 to 5 inch round post, if not a 6 inch round post. So many people try to go with a 3 to 4 inch round post, and it's not substantial enough to keep a big show horse in, and it's actually dangerous. Although the price difference is huge, you in the long run regret it because your horses are breaking posts, which is very dangerous. In addition to that, your fence just won't last as long.
Would you like to tell me anything about your fencing?
Other than what I think of the fencing?
Yeah.
It needs to all be torn down and redone.
Well, that's true.
Yes.
Yeah.
But this is extremely dangerous because even like with this little point sticking out right here, I've known a horse that split its jugular on something like that and bled out in the field.
Yeah. So in the best world, if you just had more money than you knew what to do with it, it's nice to have 4 board fencing and no climb wire, and have a double fence so the horse in this paddock can't touch the horse in that paddock, and those are all great things, and you can probably spend your life savings doing that. So it does come down to being safe, and again, depending on what part of the country you're in, it's going to be quite a bit different, because in parts of the west and southwest you see a lot of pipe fencing, even for pretty big areas, because I think they use leftover pipe from drilling.
That makes sense.
And also places where the wood is relatively scarce, some places you will run into concrete fence posts, things that here we wouldn't even consider.
How would you put anything on a concrete fence post?
This is some mysterious thing that people do, I don't know. It's not my department.
Okay.
4 board fence on everything here.
Why?
Mostly it's for the safety of the horses. If a horse kicks that fence and breaks a board, it's not that big a deal. I've had horses or been to other facilities where they have the no climb wire, and I've seen horses kick that and their foot get hung in the wire. But a horse can get hurt anywhere, no matter what kind of fencing.
The other thing that I do every single day is I clean out the water buckets. And you know, water is clean, fresh water is the most important thing for horses' health. And they drink a lot of it. Again, you have horses who do things like dip their hay in their buckets, or some of them, I've seen it, they poop in their buckets. It's disgusting, but it happens. So it's very, very important to always check their water source and make sure that the buckets are clean. What I do just to make my life easier is I always have a little rag. I leave the bucket hanging. In my case, obviously I can reach over. In a lot of other cases, in stalls, you would have to go in, but you know, just give it a good swish, wash it out. There's always, you're gonna feel if you do it with your bare hand, there's always like a little bit of slime in there, and that comes from their saliva. So, you know, it's important to keep these buckets clean. And once again, I do the same thing like I do with my feed buckets, is that once a week I put a little bit of bleach and give them a good scrub and get anything else out. Some people have the automatic watering system, which is the small bowl in the corner of their stalls. Once again, you must go in there every day. And what I do when I'm in barns that have those is I'll take a small bucket and a sponge or a rag and hold it underneath and really get the slime out and clean and make sure that float is working properly. You know, very important that they have fresh water to drink at all times.
They have automatic waters, but they don't work. So
That's good.
Yes.
Yeah, you save on water that way.
Yeah, and the horses really don't like it too much.
And the Kaiser drag is probably the best drag for any type of drag in arenas or working ground. We really like the Kaiser drag.
Okay, and you've got golf carts, and you've got...
Oh, without the golf cart you can't live. The golf cart, we keep a tool belt on there just in case we need to run and go fix a fence or something was to break. But the golf cart is an essential part. Over here we also have a hookup for 2 RVs, and we have water, sewer, and electricity for that. We have storage shed over there. We keep the lawnmowers and all the extra parts come with running a barn. Well, you have saws, you have lawnmowers, you have chainsaws, just all the tools.
So in the morning, this is my little feed cart. I have all my buckets arranged. Usually one's hanging here. They're all there. I go through my barn. Beef or chicken? Beef or chicken? Everybody ready for breakfast? Oh, you're gonna go vegetarian this morning? Okay, sir. Coming right up. And then I place it in. And you've already had your breakfast, I know. So then what I do is once they're finished, I go and collect their plates or their buckets. Good morning. And bring them back. And one of the important things about feed buckets is there's always little remnants of feed left in there, and of course a little bit of horsey saliva. This is the worst thing for flies. Flies love it. So I rinse my buckets out every morning. And then once a week, I pour a little bit of bleach in there and really clean them out. If you don't do this, you know, I mean, here in Florida, we definitely have fly issues. And so it's important to just keep up and try to eliminate these things that flies love so much. Cuts down on the infestation, and you have to use a little less pesticide to keep them at bay. And I don't know if anybody's already mentioned this, but horses are quite destructive. So I did a little repair here on this bucket because, believe it or not, quicker than I can get it out, my horsey decided to scratch his hiney on it. And crack it went. A lot of people have corner feeders that are solid in the stalls. They're built in. You can buy them, pre-purchase them, and then have them installed. I did have them, and I still have a few in some of the stalls, but I found that to be really dysfunctional. But these are these solid corner feeders, and you know what happened, and this, I don't use this one, and in fact this is one of my mini stalls, so we couldn't reach it anyway. You know, the horse prior bent it, chewed on it, cracked it, so of course here he could get hurt. And then the other thing was the feed just gets stuck everywhere in here, and you know, you have to use a toothbrush or a screwdriver and scrape all this stuff out and then try to wipe it out. Really not very well thought out. If maybe they had like a plug somewhere at the bottom where you could at least drain it from the bottom, that might have been a better solution, but for me they just didn't work very well.
I drag the arena every day. You're constantly working the arena, keeping the ground good, so it's easy for the horses to do what they do.
And what is the footing?
This has a clay base with the sand on top. We have 8 inches of clay, which is 200 loads of clay in this arena. And then the sand on top. And we were lucky when we built this arena because the sand we acquired out of that retention pond. And it's worked out really well for us.
What kind of clay do you use?
Our clay came from Claremont. And it's just regular, we would call it baseball clay. And it's 8 inches thick. If you dig down, usually we fluff it up. We usually carry about 2 to 3 inches of sand on top.
It's red clay.
Yep. You don't want to use gumball clay or gumbo clay, which is real popular in Florida.
Why?
It gets too sticky, and when it's wet, it gets too slick. It just won't work. I've tried it. This arena is 250 by 500, and we had a lot of rain over the weekend, yet the ground is still pretty good. But it's essential to me that we have great ground. I mean, especially for the horses. So everything here drains to that retention pond, and we have a pet alligator in our retention pond.
And you know, when you've got 20 horses, you have to have help. I mean, there's no way you could do all those horses properly, you know, and give them the attention and everything that they need. So you have to have help, yes.
To be honest, Leslie and I don't maintain a thing. We hire someone to, you know, maintain the grounds and do the fields and do all that for us because, quite frankly, we have no time. Well, A, we have no time, and B, we wouldn't know what we were doing either, really. So we hire someone else to do it, and we can afford to do that because it's 11 acres and not 50 acres. And I think if we had 50 acres, we'd be probably mowing grass until 10 o'clock at night, which would probably not make either of us very happy. So sometimes we have to ship, well, all the time we have to ship out to do our gallops, but at the end of the day, that's not so much a hardship.
Now, do you clean every single stall that's here, or what do you do? How do you manage this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, some of the horses are out overnight, so you know those stalls get cleaned in you know, in the evening as they get turned out. So they're nice and clean for the horses to come in first thing in the morning. And then obviously those horses that are stabled overnight, those stalls have to be cleaned every morning.
Do you do it?
Occasionally, still depends on you know how busy we are, and you know if you know some of the girls have a day off or something, and it needs doing. Yeah.
He does sometimes. I'll admit they're pretty good about helping out, especially on holidays and stuff. Everyone pitches in, and he usually gets up quite early and starts feeding and stuff before I even make it out to the barn some days. So he's not lying. He's not lying. Sometimes it's hard, but most of the time, you know, I love the job, so it's worth it. If you don't love the job, it could be a really hard thing to do day after day, but I love the horses. I love doing what I do, so almost every day it's not too bad at all, you know.
Okay, this is a beautiful facility and it works very well for both of you. But if you were to do it again, what changes would you make?
The biggest change I would make if I had to do this all over again, I would have finished my little wifey's house first before I finished the whole facility.
Yeah, it would be nice to have a house like normal people, you know. But when you're a horse person, the horses come first. Yeah, you know, I watch HGTV and all those programs with the beautiful homes and everything, and you think you're going to have that, but when I get out of the house, I'm on a horse, I'm good.
So this is my little tack room. And we have all the things we need here for working horses. Saddles. And in here I have my pads. All my bridles. I have my little shrine for my Frisian that I lost. I had him for 24 years. So that's his halter. That'll stay. Emergency wine. Always have to have emergency wine in your tack room. You never know. You never know.
This is where I keep the tack room. For the saddles and the bridles and all the...
And this is your I Love Me wall. I see all the ribbons. They're fantastic. Wow, you have been a big success so far. That's great.
Well, you see, I took all of the film, all the video of the Laws ribbons. They have a whole house full of ribbons. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to superpose
Put them on there.
Their ribbons on my wall.
That's
what do you
good.
think?
No, I think that's excellent.
Do you think they'd mind?
Well, you could also superimpose Leslie on your horse.
Because after the last horse is fed and the barn is secure and you get a chance to sit down and look around, there's really nothing like it.